Waheguru, 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 Waheguru Sahib Ji. Waheguru. Panth nihare kamani, locan parilayo sa. Orna pija pagna घिसा हर दर्शन की आसा नृप कन्या के कारण एक पया पेख तारी कामारथी सुवारथी वाकी पैज सवारी तब गुण कहाँ जगत गुरा जो कर्म नानास सिंह शरण कत जाइया जो जम्बक ग्रास एक बूंद जल कारणे चात्रिक दुख पावै प्राण गए सागर मिला पुन काम न आवै प्राण जो था के फिर नहीं कैसे बिरमावो बूढ़ मोए नौका मिलै कहो काहे चढ़ावो मैं नाही कछ हो नहीं किछ आहे न मोरा अवसर लज्जा राख लिहो सदना जन तोरा मैं नाही कछ हो नहीं किछ आहे न मोरा अवसर लज्जा राख लिहो सदना जन तोरा मैं प्रेम न चाख्या मेरे प्यारे पाओ करे मन तृष्णा न बुझी मेरे प्यारे नित आस करे मन तृष्णा न बुझी मेरे प्यारे नित आस करे वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह जी Good Prasad with Maharaj's Kirpa we've been able to reach the 4th session of this Vijay Sikhi book club. And it's been a while since we've had our last session, so I wanted to do a bit of a recap, especially for those that might be joining a bit later on. So in the first session, we go over this Granth, this book's Karta, the writer, Professor Puran Singh, and they're in brief about their life, right? So we see these times where Professor Puran Singh, came from a good Sikh family, but he didn't see a personal identification with it. It wasn't part of his particular life. And, he was a very smart person. He was a very smart being, and it ended up giving him a scholarship all the way to Tokyo, Japan, where he was studying science, and science in particular to agriculture. And in that same time, in his spiritual life, he actually became a Buddhist. And as a Buddhist, you could say a bhikkhu, like a beggar of that type of Buddhist monk tradition. It completely changed his world. It allowed him to see things according to the Buddhist tradition. They look at things, the entire Maya Srishti, the entire world that's created in front of us. They see it with fine detail, that there's divinity within everything around us. Then there was another figure, Swami Ram Tirath, who entered his life and changed him into something else, into you could say a Swami. So he turned him into Swami Puran at that time. And that went into something that was the formless, the non-dual divine. It's some things that are complicated, but if you do your research or you read up on this or even read Gurbani in that aspect, there's some things that will head towards those directions. Those teachings that he was so particularly looking for, that he kind of gained with them, they went into his tool belt. He added them on to his spiritual experiences. It was part of his spiritual journey. And then finally, he met the good Sikhs that filled that void in his life and showed him this path of Sikhi. And so that's a picture with Bhai Veer Singh. So I do recommend anyone that is listening to this and they haven't listened to the first session, it is available through recording. And so that second session, we looked at this aspect of us being the brides and Waheguru, Guru Sahib, the beloved, being our husband. And so, like in the olden times, brides, like children, or I guess younger women, from the time they were children all the way growing up, they had this expectation that they were going to get married into their in-laws' house, right? So in the same way, this world is like our you could say our peke da ghar, our parents' home, and we have to go above this. We have to connect to Waheguru. We have to marry our master, essentially. And so we looked at those different components of Gurbani that talked about Maharaj as this husband, right? And you could say taking these relationships and taking these ways of the worldly love and being able to use them as a way to kind of step up above and develop this divine love. And so these themes appear in Gurbani a lot of different times, right? You hear the term like Sohagan come up, Kuchajji, Suchajji, Gunvanti, these different aspects of the good bride, right? So these are things that we can learn from, and allows us, if we don't, we could say, analyze this relationship. When we're reading in Gurbani, we're just going to see husband, Lord, and not think too much of it. But developing that deep connection as like a couple would, that type of relationship, you want to have that one-on-one relationship with Waheguru, something that's deep and you're thinking about at all times, right? So that's the second session that we went into. The third session then went back into taking that, that lens of having this love for Waheguru and being able to see it everywhere. So whether it's, in particular, it's a reason why we have a globe that's shaped like a heart, right? It's because there's all of these components, and you could say poetry, not even poetry, media, content, history, stories, events that have taken place over time that can connect us, that can allow us to develop our relationship with Guru Sahib and Waheguru in a better way as well. So like Maharaj says, Sacha Sahib Sachnaye Pakhya Pao Apar, that what type of language are we to learn? We're trying to learn the language of love, right? And that love is for Guru Sahib. So we went over this idea that, you could learn a different language from another country, but what are the intentions behind it, right? So the intentions for a good Sikh to do anything is like with the love of Guru Sahib. Will I take part in some sort of event? Will I take part in this book club, for example? This 1 hour, 1.5 hours that we're sitting together, our focus is towards Guru Sahib. Our conversations are about Guru Sahib and developing our love and our relationship with Waheguru even stronger. So these are the types of things that you could say that that premi, the one that's the Bhagat, that does the worship of Waheguru, that has that one-on-one relationship, what they're looking for outside, right? And so everything else seems very bland to them. So even if the world says like, oh, you need to have a huge mansion, you need to have all these things like cars, horses, right? In the previous times, you need to be filthy rich, all of those things. But the person that's the Bhagat, they say that if that house doesn't have, if that mansion doesn't have love for Guru Sahib there, what's the point? If that car or that horse doesn't bring me towards Guru Sahib, then what's the point? So these are the things, those connections that allow us that through this love, that we're able to see Waheguru everywhere, right? Like that relationship that someone has, or that infatuation that someone has, when they look at anything in the world, it keeps reminding them of their crush. So in the same way, the crushes come and go, infatuations come and go. It's the very reality of things. Those who have gone through them personally, it may seem at the moment that like it's the end of life, that like this is it, and like, oh man, because this doesn't work out, like my life is over, right? There's people in India that like take this so seriously, they like take their lives over there, they commit suicide because of these types of situations. These are again things that we've thrusted upon. We're betrayed by our own expectations essentially, and instead we see this aspect. If we invest ourselves in Guru Sahib, in Waheguru, and we seek that comfort within Waheguru, then that's one that will never break. That infatuation will never break. It actually continually to grow and grow and grow in this aspect of Jagdikana. So this section is called disciple poetry that we're looking at now. And the disciple poetry, again, this entire book is meant for your European person living in England or wherever they speak English in the early 1900s, right? Because Professor Puran Singh isn't writing to other Sikhs that are living in other parts of the world, because there wasn't much of a population at that time. This is generally meant for people that have no idea about Eastern poetry, the spirituality that exists. The West at this time, and even right now, has this more rational, more reasonable, or I guess like just thinking through logic type of way. And so Professor Puran Singh is showing them this heart, this love that exists, and how the world is so much more beautiful when you see it through this lens. So it doesn't say that reject science and reject all these things, but it's saying like, look, walk in this world by seeing Vaheguru everywhere, and you'll always be filled with bliss. They mentioned this idea of like the poets, that the people that are inspired themselves, when they walk around, they're like this, this philosopher's stone, this Paras Libati. The Paras Libati traditionally is like a stone, like this stone that wherever you touch it onto metal, it turns, like say, iron into gold. So in the same way, these Gursikhs, these people that have walked this path, they're like this philosopher's stone. They're like this Paras Libati, that whoever they meet, whoever they connect with, they become like them as well. So in the same way, Guru Sahib or any of the spiritual, you could say, figures within other traditions as well, they have this fountain of youth that they feed others who are pyase, those who are suffering in this world. They're like the fountain of youth. They're the fountain of this immortality, and they give it to all those people, right? And so there's the Gursikhs that start to show that inspiration within themselves as well, and it causes others to be inspired too. So Guru Sahib as the source of that inspiration, then other Gursikhs that are walking around like candles, right? And then they're trying to, put that flame of the candle onto others as well. So that's why this entire section here is about this disciple poetry. Again, this is wording of the early 1900s, but that disciple poetry is looking at this idea of the Sikh, right? Professor Puran Singh actually doesn't limit the idea of a Sikh as in the traditional sense of us. What he says is like anyone that has a relationship with an Ishtadeb, with like a divine beloved. So whether this is like a Christian and Jesus Christ, whether this is like Muslim and Allah, for example, right? So these are different types of things that we'll start to think about, because again, this is meant for people just to inspire a spiritual practice within the lives of many other people from different traditions. And so we look back into our own tradition and we see this type of love that Guru Sahib had themselves, but also the Gursikhs today, and why why things are the way they are within Sikhi. And so we look at this first painting here. Again, this is obviously a painting, but it's someone's depiction of a Sakhi that had happened. When Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj had compiled all of this Gurbani under the terms of Ad Granth, this is when Gurbani wasn't given the Gurta Gadi yet. Even at that point, even when the Guruship wasn't passed on, Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj, you can see in this painting, they decided to put the Gurbani up on a palanga, up on a bed, right? And they sat themselves down on the ground. And this is the level of satkar, this is the level of respect, care, and love that we should have for Gurbani. Maharaj, it's like we say this, it's like we see even in Gurbani as well, Maharaj is writing in a way where it seems like, oh, well, Maharaj seems like they're trying to, like they're showing themselves as lowly. Is that how we should see Maharaj? Is Maharaj like Guru Sahib have to go through these things that we're going through too? No. The whole reason why Maharaj is explaining in these things is so they're showing us firsthand. So it's like they're kind of saying like, let me demonstrate it to you first, and then you follow by my approach. Like just copy me pretty much, right? So in the same way, Guru Maharaj put Gurbani above themselves. In the same way, the Gursikhs are to do the same. So Guru Maharaj put that Gurbani over their head, and they put it above them, saying that, hey, Shabd, like this is the same thing that we should have towards Gurbani, that it's everything for us. So if it's everything for us, then why treat it with like just something like a hockey stick where we leave it in the garage, or a soccer ball where we just leave it, right? Even people of other traditions, like Das comes from the Sikh background. But when I see the Quran, when I see the Bible, when I see other religious texts, I feel like I should put it somewhere high. I should cover it in like a kapda just to keep it clean. And it's something that's not practiced by other traditions, right? Christians, if you go to a hotel in the West here, you open up a drawer in the hotel and there'll be a Bible there, right? And they're trying to pass on their message that way. But obviously there's differences between thought. I don't want to get into that, but there's a reason why Sikhs, we treat Gurbani as with such respect, right? Maharaj says, Vaho Vaho Bani Nirankar hai. So Vaho Vaho, that wow, like this wonder, it's wonderful. Vaho Vaho Bani Nirankar hai. That this Bani, this Gurbani that's been given to us is the way, is the formless themselves. So we have confusion as to how we get to Guru Sahib. What is the goal of a Sikh? This is the time to connect with Guru Sahib. But who are we connecting to? Are we connecting to Vaheguru? Is Vaheguru something separate from us? Are we connecting to Guru Sahib? And Maharaj says, Gur Parmeshwar Ekko Jaan, no Vaheguru, Akal Purkh Vaheguru, the formless, to be the same as Guru Sahib. So in this way, Guru Sahib took on the 10 bodies, and then afterwards they gave that Gurta Gaddi. You see in the second image, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj gave the Gurta Gaddi to Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj right there. And this happens in Takht Sri Hazur Sahib. So even if you go today, if you go to Hazur Sahib, it says on top, Pargat Granth De, right? That subsequent ko hukum hai Guru Manyo Granth. That's what it says over the arch when you enter Takht Sri Hazur Sahib. And that's, to show us that that's what we're following today. We're following Guru Granth Sahib Ji as our Guru. And so this is the relationship we have. And even today, like this is from Darbar Sahib, when Maharaj is brought, when Maharaj is on the palanquin is again was used to carry royalty, right? And you have any Gursikh can have Maharaj over their shoulder. And Maharaj is khub tarike naal saje hoya. That Maharaj is like decorated so beautifully, right? And that's our love for Maharaj. That Maharaj tan man tan sab saub Gur ko. That we give our wealth, our mind, our body towards Guru Sahib. And these relationships, these types of love, like it's very hard for me to explain it. It's like something you have to feel really in the depths of your heart. And so there isn't just like, like we don't carry Maharaj, we don't bow down to Guru Granth Sahib Ji for no reason, right? They're literally the embodiment of God, of Vaheguru. So for us, it's like they're everything, right? If we're lucky to sit in Guru's Darbar, then we should like thank Guru Sahib, that thank you for bringing us here, right? That type of divine remembrance. And not prem, that's all that love that's contained within these Gursikh and hopefully contained within our hearts as well. But the reason why I share this is because this disciple poetry is again between the Sikh and the Guru. And so Professor Puran Singh is trying to show these people that are living in the West, including maybe us, and saying like, look at these Gursikhs that have had this relationship with their Guru. Or in the Sufi tradition, you have the Pir and the Murshid, right? You have the Murshid and the Murid rather. You have these types of relationships that exist, the apostles and Christ. You have these types of relationships where there's the person that's the disciple, and then you have that which is the spiritual being. And so Professor Puran Singh specifically does praise of Gurbani, and shows that, look, he says to the audience, the viewers, that I'm a Sikh, and so this is how I want to do praise of Guru Sahib. And so we look at that in this section, and there's a few different things that they address within this section here. The first we'll do is just the Ustati of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, meaning the praise of Guru Sahib. But then they say, like, in Western tradition, people aren't used to seeing repetition, right? Repetition, although in the Western tradition, if you've ever taken an English class, is something that is a type of what's it called? Rhetorical device. It's a type of literary device, meaning it's actually something that's used, alankar, as we would say in Punjabi, as a way to flourish poetry. It's something that helps add on to poetry. But in the West, a lot of people saying, like, why are we repeating things? Why do you have to do this over and over again? Because they're looking at this in Gurbani. The first time any person from the West looks at Gurbani first, they're seeing, why is the Lord, God, husband, why is this repeated so many times? Every time I read it, it comes up. And so Professor Puran Singh so beautifully explained to us, right? So here's something that they wrote about it, and then about Guru Sahib rather. See Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the great Sikh scripture. I have a personal relationship with it. As a Sikh, it is my belief and my faith that all of the great gifts of divine poetry, of the realized being to mankind, the most fascinating is that we Sikhs in the Punjab call Guru Granth Sahib Ji. It is the scripture of all nations, because Maharaj says, "Hey Jagat Guru," meaning Guru Sahib is the Guru for everyone across the world, right? And we went through different aspects of that last time as well, right? We went over these ideas of Gurbani directly mentioning people and connecting to people from across the world. It is a scripture of all nations, for it is the lyric of divine love, and all people of this earth subsist on such glowing lyrical prayer. Guru Granth Sahib is but one song, one idea, one life. Immensity is the substance of the sublime. Is not the sea much simpler than land? Touch it at any point, it is but water. Look at it from any place, it is the sea whose large masses capped from white foam dance eternally. It is like the smile of the infinite. Guru Granth Sahib Ji is not full of repetition. It has 1,000 blank pages with the one song, of the beloved's heart copied out on every page, right? And obviously they didn't use Satkar terms at that time. They didn't use like terms that we would use in respect, probably because like the people that live in the West have no idea what they're talking about. So that's why they even in the actual original, Professor Puran Singh says the Guru Granth, right? It's a way to kind of, I guess, speak to those Gore, those people that are living in the West. Even here, they even use the term page, but we would say ang, right? This is our own satkar, our own respect for Guru Sahib, but this is how they're addressing and trying to inspire these people who have a lack of divine inspiration within their own lives. And like they say it here, because we see in Gurbani in the repetition of like Har, Waheguru, Ram, all these different names, Allah, like we hear all these different terms come up in Gurbani, we start to think like for the person that first starts to read, they're like, why is there so much repetition? Why is it that we read Gurbani, the same Gurbani every single day? Why do we have to read Japji Sahib, Jap Sahib, Top Prasad Suvaye, Beinti Chaupai Sahib, Anand Sahib, Rara Sahib, Kirtan Sola? Why are they repeated all the time? Right? So there's many aspects of that. Ekata, the first aspect is this mind is very chanchal, meaning the mind is wandering all over the place. So that mind, where one day you're able to put an idea in it, it forgets the next second, right? So the mind constantly needs to be, you could say, lured back. Like if we have a leash on a like a farm animal, it needs to constantly be roped up and brought back to the farm, right? In the same way, our mind is like that. Our mind is like this animal, right? In another aspect here, Professor Puran Singh ji, they explain with such beauty. They say, look at the ocean, right? Or here they say sea, right? You look at that and see how simple it is. No matter where you go, it's still water everywhere, but it's still so deep. It's still so profound. There's still so much in it, and it's all just that one water. In the same way, Gurbani, Jithivi, if you do Prakash, you open up one Ang of Maharaj, and you open up another Ang of Maharaj, you still see this profound divineness there, right? In the same way, if you go to the Pacific coast the western coast of, say, North America, and then you were to go the eastern coast of, say, Asia, China, Japan, Korea, those places, that's still one ocean, right? Although there's different aspects of looking at it, different aspects of approaching it. So they're saying in the same way that, look, this heart is like a piece of farmland. If it doesn't rain there, then it'll never grow any crops. So in the same way, our own hearts, if they don't receive that divine love, that rain of divine love, right? That repetition of that water flowing over and over again, drops and drops and drops and drops, then there will never be any spiritual growth there. The lotus flower of the heart will never blossom, right? So these are things that are required. The heart needs to ingrain the name of Vaheguru, the name of Har, the name of Ram, the name of Krishna, the name of Jesus, the name of Allah. All of these divine names need to be ingrained into the heart. And the Guru Sahib allows us to do that by even reading Gurbani, right? Har aradhana janya re, har gur gur karta re. That I don't know how to focus or worship Vaheguru. All I know how to do is say Vaheguru, Vaheguru, Vaheguru. All I know how to say is Guru, 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 Har, Har, Har. And that's all you need. Once you have that, and that those names become regular on your tongue, it's like that Nam and the Nami. Once you're able to connect to that which the name belongs to. So if someone were to say Anandapur Sahib, Anandapur Sahib, Anandapur Sahib, eventually you'll start to understand what Anandapur Sahib is or where it is, right? In the same way, if we continually say Vaheguru, 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 we'll eventually understand, we'll eventually realize Vaheguru within us. And so this simplicity, I'm just going to see, let's see this question here. Haji, so we're going to get into this. So who's the tiny kingly figure in the purple cloak on the right side? So this was just a reminder to Das to make sure I was able to address this, because Professor Puran Singh speak about Pagatru ji. And now Pagatru comes up in Gurbani a lot of times. And they actually were originally like a very small child, right? In Gurbani it says, Ram Japoji aise Dhru Prahlad Japyo Har Jaise. So how do we say Vaheguru? How do we repeat Vaheguru's name? In the same way as Dhruv and Prahlad. So Dhruv and Prahlad were both children. So with the innocence of a child, Meaning like when you tell a child, small child, to do something, right? They won't question it. They'll just do it, right? And they focus on that one task that you do with so much love and care and attention because their mind is so simple, right? In the same way, Bhagat Truji is did that bhakti in that same way. And so Professor Puran Singh talks about in this type of light as well, within this text, and they say that Bhagat Truji, they had so much simplicity, and that Vishnuji, who originally this Sakhi came from, Vishnuji just blessed him right there, and they gave them this gave him this name, and in that ਜਦੋਂ ਨਾਮ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ, he started just saying, repeating the name of Har Har Hari Hari in their tradition, right? So ਉਹ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਛ ਨਿਬੇੜ ਕੇ, after doing all of that, Bhagat Truji is known. There's actually a star in the sky that is called, in the Canada here, we call it the North Star, right? It's also called Polaris. It's called the Pole Star. In Indian tradition, it's called Trutara, and that reference to Trutara comes up in Gurbani as well. So what it is essentially, the northern star is a star that's all the way up in the northern axis. It's on on top of the northern pole, and essentially, if you ever get lost and you know how to point out where the northern star is, it'll allow you to go in the direction of north. Like it's a star that's always in the northern part of the sky, and it never changes. Like most of the other stars, they move around because the Earth orbits differently. But where the Earth doesn't change its, you could say, its orbit is at the top of the Earth, right? At the top where the North Pole is, it doesn't change because it stays consistently there. Imagine if you're spinning a ball. If you spin a ball, that ball in the top will always stay in the middle. Everything else, the sphere part of the ball is the one that's rotating. So in the same way, that North Star is the guiding star, and it's the highest point in like the sky. Like in older traditions, that's what people used to say. So in the same way, it's also a way for us to guide our bhakti, the way that we do our nitnem, the way that we do our part, the way that we do our simran, is by looking at this Trutara and looking at the person that represents and symbolizes that Trutara, which is Bhagat Truji, right? Who it's named after. And it's to show that like the way to guide us into this way of bhakti is through this childlike innocence, keeping this innocent love for Vaheguru, for Guru Sahib within our hearts. And then when we read Gurbani, then it just takes us to other dimensions, right? Just like how that northern star is somewhere outside of this Earth and outside of this galaxy, or within this galaxy, but outside of this solar system, then in the same way, this Gurbani is going to take us above and beyond, right? So I wanted to make sure that I remember that, because that's the type of way that we want to have within our hearts. But there's a time with Bhai Jagraj Singh ji, they also I think I mentioned this maybe once in one of the previous sessions, but Bhai Jagraj Singh, there's a Christian woman he was speaking to, and she was more on the Protestant side of Christianity. And she asked Bhai Jagraj Singh, she said, why do this chanting? Meaning, like, why do you repeat? Because he was encouraging her. He said that every tradition has some sort of, chanting upon the name of Vaheguru. Because even in the Christian, you say Sochani, in their type of vichara, in their philosophy, in their, I guess, way of approaching the divine, they have their Our Father prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That hallowed be thy name means your name is holy, right? Meaning it's divine, right? So he was explaining that to her, and she said, well, why do we chant it? Why do we just say God, God, God? And Bhai Jagraj Singh said that, look, it's like a child calls the mother, right? If a child is gonna say is gonna cry at the peak of it, at the top of its lungs, and just say ma, 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 eventually the mother will come, right? So there is purpose behind even us saying Guru, 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 Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. Eventually, karde, doing this, keep on going at it, even if we don't see any results right away, to keep on going this as a way that we're calling our beloved's name, then eventually the beloved will show up. So this is the type of point of this repetition within Eastern traditions, that love filled repetition that we may not think too much of in the West. We think that we have to gain some sort of knowledge. We have to read one book. Once we're done that one book, then we have to read the second book. Read that second book and keep going until you have an overall perspective of the thing. But Gurbani is not like that. This Eastern way of approaching it is avoidant of this. It's not avoidant. I mean, like it's completely different from it. So इसी तरह, this is the type of way that we should approach and see Gurbani as a way of like this rain, right? There's so many drops of water that come to us, but we need it for this lotus of the heart to blossom. So then there's another aspect here. Here we'll wait here. Professor Puran Singh mentions Kali Koyal. So this Kali Koyal, in the Shabad here, is a bird, and the bird is in a mango tree. This is what Professor Puran Singh specifically says. He's like, this is a first-hand experience that he has. He says, I see this Kali Koyal, this black koyal type of cuckoo bird, as they would say. I mentioned it so many times in the last couple of sessions as well. Chatrik, that bird, that songbird that's looking for the rain and is just crying out, right? So this is a different type of bird in the same species, you could say, or the same, I guess, family or group, or whatever you want to say. And the Gurbani speaks about that bird as well. And hearing that bird's cry, even though it's repeating it over and over, will start to ingrain, like when you hear it, you're like, wow, okay, there's something much larger in it. There's a kind of like a pain that is sensed within this bird singing, right? So I'll explain the Shabad first. So Manu says, Kali Koyal tu kit gun kali, apne pritam ke hom birha jali, birha behun kat hai sukh paaye, jahoy kirpal ta prabhu milaye. So Maharaj says here, Kali Koyal tu kit gun kali. So it's pretty much saying that, why are you Kali? Why are you black? Meaning, why are you darkened? Because the color of the bird itself is black. And in traditional ways, like usually it's like if you have like a black mark, or you have like a, Kale likhna lek, we hear that shabad. It's saying that you have bad karma, you have bad actions that you've done, or people look at you in a bad manner. So that's just the traditional way of how they see that. This isn't referring to things like race or like things like that. It's just like you could say, like, light and dark connotation. Like light is usually connected with like, the heavens and like, angels and things like that, whereas the dark is like connected to demons, hells and things like that. So in this aspect here, Kali Koyal tu kit gun kali. So what's the reason why you're so dark and why you're so black? So Maharaj says, apne pritam ke hum birha jali. So the reason why the koyal is black, and obviously this is just a, you could say an explanation that allows us to connect our minds back to Gurbani or back to Vaheguru. It says, because the Kali Koyal has been separated from her beloved, that she is burnt, like she burnt in this pain of yearning. Apne pritam ke hum birha jali, that she's burnt in this separation from her beloved. Birha behun kat hai sukh paaye, without the beloved, without seeing the beloved, without thinking of the beloved, how can she find this happiness? How can she find peace? Ja hoy kirpal ta prabhu milaye. Then Vaheguru, when Vaheguru does kirpa on us, when Vaheguru blesses us, then we unite with Vaheguru, right? So this is the way that how this traditional, the koyal, or this Kali Koyal, this koyal is used so much in different forms of poetry, whether it's Sanskrit poetry, whether it's Sufi poetry, modern poetry, current poetry. You hear the koyal referenced in many songs as well. So we'll hear the bird sound for a bit, and then Maharaj Kirpa, it'll provide a little bit of an understanding as to why even repetition can be useful. So you can see here, although it's a bird making a sound, right? That bird making a sound has a different meaning for those who are these pagas, those who love Waheguru, right? Those who love their beloved, who love the you could say the intermediary that brings them into this union with the divine, right? That sargun that connects them to the nirgun, the form that brings them back to the formless. So they don't just see a bird there, they see something else. So this is the type of way that holi holi, when you start to read this Gurbani and these shabads, and you start to read into the lives of these pagats, whether they're directly mentioned in Gurbani or whether they're of other traditions and you read more about them, but they still keep that aspect of divine love within their heart, then you slowly start to see Waheguru everywhere. When you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, they made this reference there. That connects me back to Waheguru there. Oh, they made this, this happens in the story. Oh, wait, I can connect this back to Guru Sahib and a Sakhi that connects there. So again, you're seeing how it's not about being a type of religious person. It's like religion is no longer even a thing. Even the term religion, for example, for Das is not like what most people think of what religion is. For me, this path of spirituality is my way of love. This is my existence. This is my purpose in life, and this is everything for me. So it's no longer religion. Religion is, it's very hard. Sure, it is, but at the same time, it's something that's way larger than that. It's more. It's like there's no words to put that, right? But if you were to take my existence and change my name and whatever, it would just be Sikhi, right? It's something that completely changes our aspect of life. And what we're doing is when we look at people from other traditions, it's not saying we become people who worship, say, Vishnu, or we become people who worship Jesus, or Prophet Muhammad, whatever your relationship is with those groups. But what it is saying is like we're using that as a way to kind of grow our own spiritual relationship. So if you know someone, I've mentioned this before, if you know someone who's had a 50-year long, you could say, they're happily married for 50 years. You're not married to the same person, but you can still get tips, or you can learn from their marriage to be able to help on your own, right? To grow in your own spirituality. And I get that there's a lot of political things happening in the world right now that are kind of, I guess, overtaking these types of concepts. It's more about identity and saying like what fits into what box and those types of things. I understand that. And Guru Sahib in their Gurbani speak directly to Muslims, they speak directly to Hindus, but they also, as a separate tradition, they're speaking to their Sikhs, right? Maharaj is speaking to the Khalsa as a Tisar Panth, as a third way, right? Well, there's Abrahamic traditions and there's Dharmic traditions. There's two ways that have been most popular throughout the world. And then this is the Tisar Parvesha, the one that sits outside of it, but at the same time, using references and traditions and things like that to connect back to the one Vaheguru through, these existing stories or these existing references, right? Maharaj is, you could say, appropriating, people use appropriating in a negative term now, but Maharaj is appropriating concepts, people, and stories from other traditions to be able to grow that one-on-one relationship with the Vaheguru. And so what Professor Puran Singh is doing here is like they're bringing it up to a more modern type of example within the 1900s. And so what we're trying to do here is trying to show you that with the power of media, through the power of technology, to bring that so we can bring it to a point to where we are today, right? So there are movies, there are songs and things like that. We can do the same. But again, it's something that you have to be honest with yourself, right? No, we don't need to see this again. Anji. So now specifically going into, because in the next part that Professor Puran Singh goes through is actually just going through the poetry written by various Sikhs as well as Baba Bulle Shah at the end, right? So what they explain here, so this is a fresco of Bhai Gurdas Ji at, I believe this is Baba Atal Rai Bunga in Harmandir Sahib area. So that huge tower that's there, I believe it's from there. So Anji, there's what Professor Puran Singh says of all three of these different Gur Sikhs is that, like, if Guru Sahib themselves was a poet, then as Gur Sikhs, they're like, it's like you could say their love is Gurbani. Then what do they do themselves? They write Gurbani. They write they write their own poetry about Gurbani. They write their own poetry of loving Guru Sahib even more. They write their own poetry that dives deep into that ocean and guides us, in this world. So, for example, like I don't want to explain too much about the Gursikhs themselves, but just one thing that to say this is Bhai Gurdas ji isn't just like any like ordinary Sikh, right? Even ordinary Sikh seems like I'm diluting it. Even like your Aam Gursikh that's written down in some part of history, they had so much kala because they were blessed by Guru Sahib themselves. But Bhai Gurdas ji, when we went back to the beginning, when we saw Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj sleeping on the ground and then having the Gurbani on top on their palanga there, that the person that scribed Gurbani first, meaning the person that who physically wrote it, meaning Guru Sahib had a lot of scribes. Like scribe is someone who physically writes stuff, right? They're like they didn't have typewriters or computers back then, so someone had to write everything. So Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj used to tell Bhai Gurdas ji what to put in the Gurbani. Like they compiled all that Gurbani together, and then Bhai Gurdas ji was physically writing it as per the instructions of Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj. So that shows you how that type of relationship that Bhai Gurdas ji had with Gurbani, that they're the ones who were blessed with the seva to physically scribe all of that Gurbani, and they actually wrote their own writings as well, which are the Varan, the Kabit, and the Savaiya, right? So these Varan, Kabit, and Savaiya are like three different types of traditional forms of poetry. A Vad is like you could say an ode or a ballad, right? We hear Chandi Divad, it's the ballad or the ode to Chandi. So in the same way, Bhai Gurdas ji's Varan, these forms of writing were all these ballads to Guru Sahib, to Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj, to all the Dasan Guru Sahiban. So in their writing, it's just this love towards Guru Sahib that we find there, right? And this Shabad, or this rather this Bhai Gurdas ji's Vad we hear is so beautiful, and this comes from the 27th Vad and the first body of the 27th Vad. Das had mentioned part of this in passing before, but now it's in front of you properly, and I can explain it in that way. So, Laile Majnu Asaki, Chaunchak ki Jati, Sorat Bija Gavia, Jas Sugada Tavati, Sassi Punnu Dosati, Hue Jat Ajati, Mehi Wal No Sohani, Nain Tardi Rati. Raja Hir Vakhaniya, Oh Pirm Parati, Pir Murida Pirhadi, Gavan Parbati, Pir Murida Pirhadi, Gavan Parbati. So all these examples in traditional Punjabi context, you hear all these stories all the time. If you watch like Punjabi movies, or if you watch Punjabi or you hear Punjabi songs, or even things in generally in South Asia, you'll hear these different stories that come up. Laila and Majnu, right? Sorat and Bija. You hear Sassi and Punnu. You have Sonia and Mehiwal, Heer and Ranja, right? So all of these different stories, but Bhai Gurdas are saying at the end of this, right? Because they're speaking from their own love, right? Jede Laila ta Majnu si, oh aaye te gaye, meaning they came and then they died. Sorat and Bija, they came and they died. Although their stories had these tragedies or these aspects of sharing love, and we can learn so much from them with our own relationship with Vaheguru, but they came and went. They left and they died, and they were only destined to come back into this world, right? Because they died for your Kam, they died for their mo. But jira Gursikhya Pir Murida Pirhadi Gavan Parbati, that out of all the different relationships, all the different stories, the story between the Sikh and the Guru are the highest, the disciple and that divine being, whether it's of our tradition or of another tradition. That's something that takes them beyond these types of two people relationships, where there's a Sassi and a Pannu, where there's a Laila and Majnu, where there's a Heer and Ranja. The Guru and the Sikh, they become one eternally. There is no difference between them. Oh, jaise jalte budh budh jaise jalte upajit rang jo jal hi bekhasma. Just like a wave of water comes up out of the water and goes back into it, that's the way that a Sikh and the Guru is. The Sikh goes back into Guru Sahib as if it was never separate to begin with. So these things are very, this is all about love, but it's showing such a deep spiritual concept within there. And that just shows how the type of rich relationship that Bhai Gurdas Ji had with Guru Sahib, that he felt even to himself that the Sikh and the Guru is way more precious, or they're way more valued than all of the different tragedies or the different love stories we hear in the world. So that's Bhai Gurdas Ji. Professor Puran Singh described them as well. Then we look at Bhai Nanlal Ji. And so Bhai Nanlal Ji, Das has had the great blessing upon Das's head to have learned by Nanlal Ji's poetry, their ghazala from Gyani Gurvinder Singh Nangali, who's written Gyani Ji has created a collection of all of the poetry of Bhai Nanlal Ji. And so if you haven't heard of him, I'll explain a little bit about him. Obviously, there could be a full 10-hour katha about their life. But essentially, Bhai Nanlal Ji was originally from Afghanistan. So today we have a lot of Afghani Sikhs. In the past, there were way more. There's traditional Sikhs that came from Kabul. There's history within Guru Har Gobind Maharaj. This the different code that Maharaj had received as offerings from their Sikhs in Kabul. Right, these are examples of that. So imagine in Afghanistan, Bhai Nanlal Ji had spoke Farsi. They spoke Persian language. So a lot of the poetry actually written is not in the traditional Punjabi that we know today, right? So that's one thing that we can kind of see, that there's actually a lot of poetry writings and stuff that are not just in Punjabi, but in so many different languages, right? So Bhai Nanlal Ji, they were actually one of the secretaries of Aurangzeb. And so he sung all this poetry and he wrote all this poetry, and Aurangzeb said, become a Muslim, because he was originally actually from a Hindu tradition. So he came from a Hindu background, and he came to Aurangzeb because he knew poetry, he knew Farsi, and he's well versed, and he was very knowledgeable in the traditional way. It's like someone who studied politics. Obviously they can, if they have a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD in politics, they should be going and working in politics, right? So in the same way, he was the most learned in that type of aspect of his life. And so Aurangzeb said that you become a Muslim. And so pretty much Bhai Nanlal Ji said no. And Aurangzeb said, like, do it or we'll kill you, right? And so this type of thing sent Bhai Nanlal Ji, it sent him looking for help and looking for somewhere where he's able to kind of still be able to live, but also continue the life of his poetry and live in this type of manner, right? In his kind of in his nobility, essentially. And so he hears about Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj and how Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj was taking care of all these poets and encouraging them to write poetry and all these things. And so he ran to Anandpur Sahib. And so Bhai Nanlal Ji meets Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, and he instantly falls in love with Maharaj. Like, through Maharaj, he blesses him with his Sikhi, and Maharaj keeps him safe. And so even despite all of the Maharaj even leaving Anandpur Sahib and all of the stuff that happened in Battle of Chamkaur and all these things, Maharaj sent Bhai Nanlal Ji back to Multan, where he was where he actually didn't send him back. He sent him to Multan so he could settle there while all this chaos was going on. So Professor Puran Singh actually mentions within this writing that despite there being so much going on in the world, Bhai Nanlal Ji was just lost in his colors of love. So in the same way, that Gursikh that has so much love for Guru Sahib, regardless of whether the world is going into chaos, which we're seeing a lot right now, if he still has that love and that remembrance of Waheguru, he is still alive, meaning he is still in pleasant state. He's still in Chardi Kala. So this is the type of thing that we want, no matter what's happening in the world. Although sometimes the world, we have to step up and take action, or we step up and it encourages us to do more bhakti. But one thing is that if we don't have this divine love, we'll often get pushed and pulled by the ways of the world. Whatever happens in the world, it'll either pull us towards Gurbani or pull us away from Gurbani. So right now it's like we're getting pulled towards Gurbani because of all the different things that are happening. But sometimes an event may happen that pushes us away too. So the one who truly has love, regardless of what's happening in the world, they constantly remember Maharaj, and they're constantly asking for Maharaj's union, meaning connecting with Maharaj 24/7, right? So within these different aspects of Bhai Nanlal Ji's writings, it's just filled with love. And then when Maharaj sends Bhai Nanlal Ji to Multan, Bhai Nanlal Ji write all these ghazala. They write all of these ghazals are these sets of couplets that are that are said to have all, like you could say, these couplets that have similar themes, and they have the same tukan, meaning the ending line is the same, right? So there's many, like you just, if you read any of, like even if you read a translation of it, you're gonna be like, wow, there's so much love in this. And there's just some that Das always refers to, like Koshast umr ke dar bugazard varna che hasil ast tazin gumbaze kabud mara. So it's like that life which is spent in remembering Vaheguru, that life is koshast. It's something that's beautiful. It's well spent. It's truly peaceful. Varna che hasil ast tazin gumbaze kabud mara. Otherwise, what was the point of coming into this world underneath the blue dome? That's something that I've like just kept close to my heart all the time. But there's so many other poetry that is added on here, and Das is gonna play this video of there's a Afghani Sikh that actually explains that says it in the original Farsi type of thing with the accents and everything. So again, there's Hindustani Farsi, and then there's like Afghani Farsi, and then that's even different than like the original Persian Farsi, like in Iran itself. So this is just one short video of this, and then it's because like it's spoken in proper Farsi that I wanted to share it. Otherwise, I could just share and explain it. But this is the way, the type of love that Bhai Nanlal ji has for Guru Sahib.
بهر کجا که روی جان من خدا حافظ و برد دل و ایمان من خدا حافظ. بیا که بلبل اگلها در انتظار تو اند، دم به جانب بستان من خدا حافظ. نمک ز لال لبت ریز، نمک ز لال لبت ریز بر دل ریشم، تپید سینه بریان من خدا حافظ. چه خوش بود قیادت قدت چو سرور بلند، دم بوسه گلستان من خدا حافظ. بیا به مردک چشمم که خانه توست، درون دیده گریان من خدا حافظ.
Waheguru. So this is, I'm just so thankful that there are some good Sikhs that, like, they came from an Afghani background and they shared this. I remember this was my connection to Bhai Nanlal ji at first, because most of the Aam Sangat, I mean Aam as in like, your average Punjabi Sikh living in the West, doesn't know about like the Farsi and thing, and that just like kind of like, you could say I developed a curiosity into it, and then I'm like, wow, this is like spoken so beautifully, but it's not in like your Punjabi. And the lyrics, or I guess the poetry behind it, the translations were just like, whoa. It's something that I want to experience, right? It's something, again, even reading the poetry of these Sikhs, it gets you inspired. It's like you're with them right now. And in that same way, okay, we're done with this. In the same way, Professor Puran Singh mentions Bhai Veer Singh. Bhai Veer Singh is that person, and again, I'm not going to take too much time. There's probably going to be 10 minutes more, and then we'll go into a short discussion. But Bhai Veer Singh is the one that inspired Professor Puran Singh themselves. And Professor Puran Singh, it's so interesting, the fact that they write this. They say, look, Bhai Veer Singh isn't just writing for the people that are living in the 1900s. He is communicating with people in the past and speaking to people in the future. We're sitting here almost 100 years after Bhai Veer Singh has written all this, and Professor Puran Singh is saying this, almost prophesizing what, like this book club right now. The last book club we did was about Bhai Veer Singh's writing, Sata Kiya Rata. The one before that, Sant Gatha, was also was written by them. And I think even in the future, after this book club is done, we're probably going to do another Bhai Veer Singh book, right? So it's so beautiful how, like, these good Sikhs, they attach us to something which is completely eternal. And so there's so many, if you search up on YouTube right now, by Singh Kavita, you'll find so many different Punjabi poetry written in this way of this love towards Guru Sahib, but written in Punjabi. A lot of these things, you could say words might be difficult for us to understand. Bhai Singh is like the epitome of like pure Punjabi language. Like they write in this Punjabi that like people have forgotten about. Like if you ever want to find out about like what Punjabi actually sounds like, or what is the non-mixed Punjabi, which is not like, you could say, like right now we have a lot of mixed words and things like that. You read Bhai Sabji's writing and you're just like, whoa, you're blown away. तुसां तोड़िया असी टुट पे विछड़ गए सां डालो तुसां सुंग सीने ला सटिया विछड़ गए तुसां नालो पैरां हेठ लिताड़ लंघाऊआं कीता खंबड़ी खंबड़ी पर शुकराना छो तुहाडी दा अजे ना भुलदा सानू. I'll explain a little bit as to what Bhai Singh are saying here, as much as Das understands. Tosan todia asi tut pai. So that he's saying that we're like flowers, and Guru Sahib is like someone going to pick a flower, right? They break off a flower from a bush, right? Tosan todia asi tut pai, meaning that Maharaj, you, when we say tut pai, like in Punjabi, tut pai, someone usually says when someone has like an emotional like outburst, or like in that type of way. And sometimes say like, oh, tut ke pa gaya, that someone is getting angry and he's like without thinking anything, without holding back, they just like become angry and they're just like very vicious in that type of way. But also in this way, it's saying like we became broken, right? Tusan todia asi tut pe, that Guru Sahib has touched us. They have shown us some sort of care, that they have brought us towards them. The asi tut pe, that we broke, our egos have broken. Vichad gaye san dalo, tusa sung sine la satya. So where does the flower exist? It is attached to the dal. The dal is the branch, right? So where is this you could say even the lotus flower, or say a rose, it's attached to the branch, which is sitting inside the world, which is sitting, you could say, connected to this dunya, this entire universe that we're in, that we're trying to overcome, we're trying to go above. To see sung sine la satya. So we've disconnected from the branch, and now come to the sungana, meaning the Maharaj is smelling us. They're enjoying our true being, right? What is the point of a flower? It's to blossom, and it gives us fragrance. It gives us nice smell, and that nice smell is like the amrit. It pours into us, and Maharaj is smelling that. Maharaj is enjoying their sikh through this process of like that person admiring the flower. We're truly admired, we're truly beautiful when we're connected to Guru Sahib, and we're Sanmukh, we're facing Guru Sahib, like the sunflower is facing Guru Sahib at all times. Para het litard langaunga kita khambadi khambadi. To be honest, if I tell you, para heta means like at the bottom of your feet, but I have no idea what litard langaunga kita khambadi, kita ta ho gaya, they've done, but khambadi could be like onomatopoeia, meaning it's like explaining like a sound using a word, but I don't know what that means. But we can skip that. Par shukrana cho tuhadi da aje na bhulda sanu. I think what it means is saying that Guru Sahib has broken us off from the branch, put them to themselves, but then now has dropped us back into the world, right? Dunya de vich fir set ditta, but it doesn't matter. They're saying like, par shukrana cho tuhadi, we're happy to even be touched by you. That Guru Sahib tusi sanu nadar kita hai, that Maharaj, you have looked at us, right? By Nanla oftentimes says, I'm happy to even see like your side eye. If Maharaj looks at me from the corner of their eye, that's enough for me. It's like just even one drop, right? Ek boond jal karne chatrik birilai, chatrik dukh pave. That chatrik is suffering only for one drop of water. In the same way, even one touch from Guru Sahib is enough from us. Even if they throw us back into the world, that inspiration stays with us our entire life and keeps us in remembrance of that Vaheguru. Ajina Pol Dasanu, we still never forget. Although Maharaj, you've shown us such, you could say Ananda, you may have these spiritual experiences from Bhakti, from Nam Simran, and sometimes you might have to go into the world and you might be separated from that. But then that experience stays with you your entire life, and it acts as inspiration. And that again isn't something that you've done on your own accord, but it's something that's blessed by Guru Sahib as well through Gur Prasad, right? So this is the type of, and Bhai Nanlal, or sorry, rather Bhai Veer Singh has written hundreds of poems that are of this nature. And so we have, our entire lives to go and read them, or maybe even pick up the terminology to understand them completely. So I don't want to share too much, but again, Bhai Veer Singh is Bhai Veer Singh, even Professor Puran Singh says that Bhai Veer Singh is an era of himself, and that is so true to say. Bhai Veer Singh themselves is like the 1900s is just like carried on the shoulders of Bhai Veer Singh. Even us reading them right now, Bhai Veer Singh is just something else. It's some, like some avatar sent to us for our to us to connect to Guru Sahib even stronger. So last one, Baba Bulle Shah. So again, Professor Puran Singh goes from Sikh, and then now Sufi tradition. So I'm going to share two different things from Baba Bulle Shah. We went over Baba Bulle Shah in the past for a story about him going to get his hair braided with flowers in it because someone told him that they were going to get married and it was going to help them, get appreciated by their husband, right? And he wanted to do the same, right? But really innocent heart that they had. So Hanji Baba Bulle Shah. So this is one that actually refers back to like Amrit Vela Utthana. Although they're must, meaning they're completely in that love and they don't really practice the rules of religions and things like that, they're still valuing this time of waking up early in the morning. But they use these worldly examples to break our ego. And they say, Bulle Shah uth yaar manale. Naya te bazi le gaye kutte tai to utte. They're saying Bulle Shah, they're talking to themselves, Ut yaar manale. Go and make your, it's meaning you're trying to win someone over, right? It meaning like someone who is like, you could say angry with you or upset with you, or someone that you're trying to impress, like you have to kind of convince them, right? So they're saying, Ut yaar nu manale. That's the time to when to do this is early in the morning, right? For Muslims, they pray their Fajr Salah. For their Sikhs, they have their their Amrit Vela when they're praying their Nityanim Bani. For the Hindus, they have the Brahm Muhurat, right? They have all of these different things, all of these different traditions, and they emphasize on waking up early in the morning and connecting to the divine. But they're saying like, look, Netam Bazi lage kutte. Otherwise, who's gonna win the game? The dogs are gonna win, right? Because dogs, because I can say this for myself, my dog will always wake up before me. They're saying the dogs will get up because they know the day has risen and they're out for rakhya or they're out for food, right? Dogs will get up early in the morning because they have this like primal instinct to go and protect the area or to go eat food. So they're saying that even though that their drishti, their way of seeing things is different than yours, they have a better connection because they're waking up before you, right? You're going to go meet your beloved. You're trying to convince your beloved, but your beloved is more connected to them because they wake up before you. So this is Baba Bulle Shah, another person of a Sufi tradition, but it makes us understand that thing where Guru Sahib says Satgur ka jo Sikhya kai so par ki ut har naam te aave, right? So these things the Maharaj says in the Gurbani themselves, but we see it in such a clever way of showing to us, right? And then this second one here, this is something that I really appreciate as well, really love. Bulle Shah asan thi vakh nahi, bin sahon thi duja kakh nahi, ਪਰ ਵੇਖਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਅੱਖ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਜਾਣ ਜੁਦਾਈਆਂ ਸਹਿੰਦੀ ਏ. So they're saying Bulle Shah, again, they're speaking to themselves. Asan thi vakh nahi, that our Sah, our beloved, they're not separate from us. Guru Sahib is ang sang hornvi. Even when we're in school, even when we're crying, when we're upset, even at all times when the world is falling apart, Guru Sahib feri sade naal hai. Waheguru is ang sang sahai all times. That doesn't mean that like things go as you want. This is just the divine nature. Vaheguru sare passe baithe hai. Maharaj is sarvyapak. Bulle Shah asan thi vakh nahi, that they're not separate from us. Bin saho thi duja kakh nahi. Without Vaheguru, there's nothing else. There's no second. There's not like, oh, one place Vaheguru exists, in another place Vaheguru doesn't exist. It dani hunda. Everything that we see in this world, every little thing that we can understand in this 5 elemental world, even within our thoughts, within this physical world, within places we haven't reached, the depths of our ocean, Vaheguru is within there as well. Duja kakh nahi. Kakh, people, we say kakh nahi as mean like kuch nahi, nothing. But kakh literally means a dried up piece of grass. And like that usually refer to being like worthless, being nothing. But in this aspect, duja kakh nahi, meaning there's nothing else. There's not even a piece of dried grass that no one cares about that is seen as worthless. ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਵਸਦਾ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਜਾਨ ਜੁਦਾਈਆਂ ਸਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਵੇਖਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਅੱਖ ਨਹੀਂ that we don't have the eye to see it, we don't have this drishti. So that's why again this type of poetry, when you start to bring it into your life and you start to see Gurbani in that way, then it'll allow you to see Vaheguru everywhere, and then you'll get divinely inspired at all times. And obviously if you haven't, then you start to sing that poetry that does that for you, that's saying that Maharaj Nikatas Noar Pekho Nahi, that I've heard that you're nearby, I've heard that you're Angasang, but I haven't witnessed it, I haven't experienced it myself. Then you start to sing it, and then one day that it comes as a form of an ardas, you keep singing those shabads, and then one day you'll be able to behold Vaheguru with you at that time as well. And you keep begging and begging and begging in that varag, in that separation, and then one day with Maharaj's Kripa, with that Gur Prasad, you get into a state where Vaheguru is always seen as with you and never separate. That's that true darshan. Tahi Jan Judaiyan Sahndi. That's why the soul suffers its separations, because we haven't had that drishti of seeing Vaheguru everywhere. So this poetry is actually one of those ways that helps us elevate through this world. So this is where we end off. That's going to end the recording here. I'll end off with Salog Pavan Guru Pani Pata Mata Tat Mahat ਦਿਵਸ ਰਾਤ ਦੋਏ ਦਾਈ ਦਾਇਆ ਖੇਲਾ ਸਗਲ ਜਗਤ ਚੰਗਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਬੁਰਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਵਾਚਾ ਧਰਮ ਹਦੂਰ ਕਰਮੀ ਆਪੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਕੇ ਨੇੜੇ ਕੇ ਦੂਰ ਜਿਨੀ ਨਾਮ ਤੇ ਆਇਆ ਗਏ ਮਸਕਤ ਘਾਲ ਨਾਨਕ ਤੇ ਮੁਖ ਉਜਲੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਛੁੱਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਨੀ ਨਾਮ ਤੇ ਆਇਆ ਗਏ ਮਸਕਤ ਘਾਲ ਨਾਨਕ ਤੇ ਮੁਖ ਉਜਲੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਛੁੱਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ